92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. It's Conservative Cat Saturdays from 5 to 7. Be sure to find the broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and we're just everywhere. David Paul Blumenshine. David Paul Blumenshine is on YouTube as well. You can find him at the DPB Show on YouTube and subscribe to that channel. David Paul Blumenshine joining me in studio to talk a little bit about the Illinois State Fair. This entire show, the first hour, we covered David Paul, Lisa Smith, who's running in the 96th Illinois State District. Again, she lost the first time, but she's running again. We covered Regan Deering and Chuck Erickson in the 88th. We talked about Tom DeVore and how he lost, or didn't lose. Dan Calkins lost his case.
At the Illinois Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Tom DeVore is dealing with kind of a loss because the Effingham County judge won't hear his case, dismiss his case.
Which will be appealed.
Yeah.
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 And so will Calkins. Calkins will appeal his.
Yeah. Just a lot of loss.
But you said Illinois State Fair. It was Republican Day at the Illinois State Fair. Happens every year.
David Paul, I wouldn't go if it wasn't Republican Day.
Well, I don't need to go and see the fact that the taxpayers are funding these huge, huge Taj Mahal tents. I say Taj Mahal because
air conditioned,
ice machines outside.
Police tent. I went in there and I was like, "Ooh, it's kind of cool in here." And I look over, there's an air conditioned.
You get that at at the Secretary of State, the Treasurer, Frederick's tent. You get it at Mendoza's tent, and it's funny because JB, Juliana, it's not just one tent; they each have their own
individual tents. Yeah.
Taxpayer funded, because they want to make sure that who is going to work for you, which unfortunately that's not the case.
Which I feel like isn't even legal, because here you are, it's almost like campaigning, right? Susan Mendoza, comptroller. Feels very campaigning,
doesn't it?
And you can't campaign using taxpayer
dollars. It clouds the lines, right? Because you are in front of the public, you are promoting your office. However, you're also promoting the fact that you run for re-election, and it's campaigning. Should campaign financing be involved through the Illinois State Board of Elections? I do. I believe that. Mm-hmm. I believe we need to look into it because it is a form of campaigning. They're providing water, they're providing propaganda about their office that they hold, that they were voted into. It's an unfair system. Obviously, Kat, we got to, as we said before we just came on air, we've got to mirror them and model them. And we need to do exactly what they're doing. Sitting back and expecting them just to stop doing what they're doing, whether legal or illegal. I mean, we know that they don't have any appreciation of the Constitution because they fly in the face of it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and with the same thing with the Unit 5, right? Say no to Unit 5 tax increase. The folks that were saying no to that tax increase, that tax referendum, which we now know was dedicated to the salaries of the Unit 5 superintendent and the employees there, which was their plan from the beginning. It wasn't to save the extracurriculars.
They weren't going to shut down the kids' programs, and
no, that was all propaganda.
And we're going to see that as it rolls out in the money they brought in. But I kind of got you off the mark. I think you were mentioning Lisa Smith and Regan Deering and Chuck Erickson and all the candidates that we had the pleasure of running into at the Illinois Republican Day at the fair. They have a picnic.
Yeah. And it was awesome. And they all lost. That's where I'm coming at after this, is this Lisa Smith. And we lost the tax referendum, Unit 5 tax referendum, right? But when Democrats lose, they keep going.
Yes.
The Unit 5 tax referendum, was it fair that they brought it back for the municipal election? No, the taxpayers, the voters said no to the referendum the first go around. And then they brought it back the next election cycle. Was that ethical? Probably not. But should Republicans be playing the same game?
They don't.
100%.
It's interesting because I spoke with a gentleman who's on the county board in Grundy County. And right now, Grundy County has 18 county board members, 17 Republicans and 1 Democrat.
Oh.
And until they got that majority, super majority, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Grundy County, they don't play. They're not playing nice in the sandbox. And
I'm
of
kind of
course,
from Grundy County. They're awesome. Morris,
yeah,
Illinois.
yeah.
Dwight, I think
And
is.
I don't know the makeup of the county board. I don't know how many of those people are moderate Republicans, center right, conservative. But I know this. He shared this with me. That wasn't always the case. They weren't 17-1. They were, 15 to 3. They were 14. The number stepping down. There used to be more Democrats on the board.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter what that ratio was, even with 1 Democrat, they're still asking. They never stop asking. They never stop pushing their agenda, their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And this is no different than parenting. Responsible parenting is you've got to be the adult. You've got to say no. There are times when you put boundaries and limitations on your children. Well, we are being run by a bunch of adolescents and children, not only federally, but and the state level in a lot of these townships and municipalities and county boards. We have people who are adamant that they are going to spend as much as they can, whether we have the money or not. And that was evidenced in the school board race here in McLean County for Unit 5. It is truly holding hostage our children for the sake of raising salaries amongst the administrators and staff and teachers.
Yeah. Well, and you've got to be willing to play the same game. And Grundy County seems like they have been able to, say, hey, we aren't going to stop, even if there is 1 Democrat on that county board. We're not going to stop pushing this agenda, pushing our agenda, because our agenda is true and it is just, right? And it
Yeah.
is a good platform. And
it is equitable.
yeah.
It is fair.
Well, and that's the problem. I don't think a lot of Republicans truly believe in the platform. They don't defend it with such passion.
Well,
The Democrats will defend their agenda until they're blue in the face. In fact, they're willing to go to such lengths, like indicting a former president or going after their political opposition in legal ways. And we've seen that here locally. Brad Worth, his he was willing to play the game, right, and object to certain petitions, but we had a Michael Madigan attorney come to the defense of the Democrats who were running for the Unit 5 school board.
Because of the Uniserv representative, Ben Matthews, who was sitting
Mhm.
directly behind the candidate, petitioner, I should say, at that time. It was the
I think it was
petitioner.
Mark Adams.
Yes, who was being objected to. But hold that thought, Kat, because I think you just went by it. The Trump indictments at the state fair, they have the picnic. Once again, I'm looking at a picture of the stage, and Don Tracy, the Illinois GOP chair, gets up there, and it's funny because I have a picture, and I'll show it to you real quick. It is a picture where there is a Trump placard where it says Trump 2024. Over 1,000 of those signs that said Farmers for Trump 2024 were passed out to people coming into the picnic. Now, I'm going to tell you there wasn't 1,000 people there, but people took multiple copies of it, right?
Mhm.
They weren't allowed on the stage. They have the stage set up, and then they have chairs behind because typically you can hold cards for your candidate. Instead, there were cards that said for working families. That was going to be the theme. And they were never going to mention the Trump indictment. And fascinating, there weren't any other candidates on the presidential level running as nominees for the presidential or running as candidates for the presidential nomination under the Republican Party there at the fair that day. Only Trump placards. Obviously, the Illinois GOP and their leadership are not pro-Trump.
No.
There's only one true congressperson at this point that I believe is pro-Trump. That's Mary Miller. In fact, per this airing of your show, Bongino did a piece where he called out Mary Miller and gave her kudos on his
Mm,
show
mm.
for standing up to, I can't remember the guy's name, through the Commission of Health, where they're going to bring back vaccinations and masks and everything. And she said,
Yeah.
you're going to have to explain why it is that these cases amongst young men on, how do you say that?
Myocarditis.
Myocarditis has spiked.
Myocarditis. Yeah.
Myocarditis has
Mhm.
spiked. But I just want to not run too far from it, but the Illinois GOP did not bring up anything about the Trump indictments. In fact, they were repeating the talking points of the left, of the Democrat Party, basically stating, how can a man who's been indicted 4 times, give me a break? The Democrat Party has one strategy when it comes to running in 2024, because they can't come up with COVID again. They can't come up with mass vote by mail ballot. They're going to try that.
It's the indictment
It's
content, and they're going to
destroy
get
Trump.
because this is the thing I talked about in my morning show this past week. It was Donald Trump, right? The media has no interest in actually understanding why the right might not like Trump, because there's plenty of opposition to Donald Trump on the right. People were very upset that he turned the government over to Anthony Fauci, and they're upset that he didn't drain the swamp like he had promised.
Yeah.
Those are two big things. But the media never talks about that with those on the right who actually oppose Trump for, I would say, a decent reason.
Do you know, without Trump turning over, so anytime, I mean, you're going to get the other side of it. I am Trump true and true, because I think that
Me too. Even with that, right?
Even with that.
Yep.
But if he hadn't gone warp speed on the vaccination,
They would have said the same thing.
we would have never known.
No,
the
true.
level of all of this has been exposed. Trump kept hedging himself. He didn't say, go get the vaccination. He said, if you want to, we're trying to do everything we can to deal with this health crisis. He was being lied to, just like you and I were.
Mm-hmm.
All of us were being lied to. And that's what they do best. They lie to you, and then they turn around and say, well, but you bought into it. You bought into it. No, we had a major crisis going on. We had crimes against humanity being perpetrated by the entire
Wuhan, China. Anthony Fauci funding it. It was a
Davos led people like Klaus Schwab. I mean, all these people were in this arena of pushing this narrative. And look at what happened. It was about was setting Trump up to get him out of office. That never, since the day he came down the escalator, the golden escalator, right? And announced, they came after him because they knew that he was going to start the process of doing what he has always said he would do. Because that's one thing about President Trump. He lives up to it. He says what he
didn't
does.
Drain the swamp, but he definitely exposed the swamp.
That's right.
And how are you to drain just these institutions that have been corrupt for decades and decades? I mean, who killed JFK?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
let's talk about the swamp of Illinois.
Yeah.
We know who the Democrats are. We now know
who the players
That's
are,
right. The Judicial Watch lawsuit filed on behalf of Illinois Conservative Union. They won that case in front of a court. They are now awarded the voting data that should be delivered to them. And the initial reports are that Illinois has over 800,000 inactive voters on the voter rolls. 14 counties have more registered voters than they have eligible voters in their counties. We've got issues. According to federal law, voter rolls have to be cleaned up. And unfortunately, they're not in Illinois. And it allows for the public to have this scrutiny there, or this suspicion that something is happening. You know, I'm not, it's pretty obvious as you walk through the numbers. And I know that I continue to bring this up, that we had 4 consecutive gubernatorial races where the Republican Party never moved too far from 1.7 million votes. But we have the Democrats launching
Double.
ballistically by almost 800,000 votes. From the time that Pat Quinn lost to Bruce Rauner in 2014, the next election for governor, JB versus Rauner, JB ended up with almost 900,000 votes more than Rauner. How does that even happen? Especially during a time when Illinois is losing population and losing a representative.
You couple that with the depopulation of Illinois, where people are fleeing the state. How do you gain all of these voters? It's not like Republicans have magically switched their votes. Well, they haven't, because they
ended up with the same amount. Darren Bailey got the same amount of votes that Rauner had, that Bill Brady had. We've never moved the needle. So how is that statistically, mathematically?
Mm-hmm.
That the Democrats, well, somebody said at the Illinois State Fair picnic, well, they're just doing a better job than we are. Well, I would believe that if we had fewer votes, or if we didn't move at all.
Yeah.
Once again,
which doesn't make any sense at all. It is
something is happening. Why are there 800,000 people on our voter rolls in Illinois that are inactive?
You're listening to Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal Conservative Cat, and David Paul Blumenshine is joining me in studio. And you guys need to go subscribe to his channel. He has an amazing show that airs Sunday 1 to 3 live on the radio, but you can always catch the content on the DPB show at YouTube. Subscribe to that channel, hit the like button when he goes live, and share out his podcast. You can find his podcast at cities929.com. We're talking about Illinois corruption, and we're talking about the Illinois State Fair and how it was on full display. The Uniparty. And, I like how Tom DeVore put it. He says it's a bunch of rah-rah and yee out here and I just like to listen. That's what he told me. And he goes, there's no real talk about how they're going to.
Steps, no substance. There's no game plan. There's no forward thinking.
Let's clean up the voter rolls. Now, what would you say to a Republican who said, well, that's not true? Carol Davis was there.
Well, she was. I mean, here's the thing. We talked about this on my show last Sunday, that Carol Davis, many of us were there for 2 straight picnics over 2 years, 21 and 22. We had some hope. We had a guy that was standing up. He was not only standing up to the Democrats, but he was standing up to the Republicans and saying enough is enough. This has got to stop. He didn't go on the floor and wear his mask. He said we're taking away people's freedoms and their rights. That's why he filed a lawsuit with Tom DeVore against Governor Pritzker. But Carol Davis was there. There were a lot of us that were there, hopefully saying, are we going, and we already knew this, the establishment has no desire to govern Illinois, the establishment Republican Party. I'm not upset with the Democrats. I'm upset with the Republicans. Rich Porter.
The enemies are not at the gates, folks.
That's right.
The enemies are in your midst. They're the traitors in your midst.
That's right.
That's what I say all the time. It sucks because you will never be able to get anywhere. People are like, oh, this Trump indictment, it sucks. And I'm like, well, blame Brian Kemp. Blame the governor of Georgia, blame the 2 state houses. I think there's a couple of legislators that have written, statements.
A state senator from Georgia actually pushing for the impeachment of Fani Willis. There are Trump endorsed Congress people that are fighting. I'm not saying it's few and far between. We're not seeing
but the entire Republican Party should be backing Trump with everything they've got. But here's the thing.
Despite the fact that we have a primary. I get it. We have a primary. And it's very obvious who the nominees.
Look at the Democrats. They don't have a primary.
No, they don't even have a candidate as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because they're going to replace Joe Biden. Joe Biden will not be the Democrat nominee in 2024. They've already gone to the bullpen. They're trying to figure out how they can make this happen. And unfortunately, everything has been so exposed. They have no clothes, right? They are running around. They can't, because technology, which we don't do the bang up job that the Democrats do, but we're catching up. We need to do more. people need to be involved at all levels of technology and combating what is currently taking place. It's the only way we're going to win this thing back is to mirror them, symmetry. If they're doing it, we need to do it. I'm
Mhm.
not saying we break the law. In fact, I say au contraire, we expose them for breaking the law as we are taking them on head on.
Yeah, well, and uh, I just think that Republicans, they need to be more cohesive, I guess, and not so broken. And because it would be great if we could just decide on a primary candidate right out the gate. Because the Democrats, well, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, right? They decided right away that Joe Biden was going to be their candidate. This whole
And they
primary, it's
stepped
just a
away.
facade.
They stepped away. No, I get it.
Yeah,
There was some negotiations, and there was probably in the exchange of favoritism and things like that, which is perfectly legal.
yeah,
That is legal. You can do that if somebody bows out. Uh, we the grassroots movement is so strong in Illinois, but yet we continue to see the establishment, which really anytime someone's running under the guise of the NRCC, which is the National Republican Congressional Committee for Congress, or if they're running under the state under the HRO, the House Republican Organization, if they're backed by them, it usually means they're backed by them because they want to maintain the limited power they have. It's all about power. It's not about the people.
hmm,
See, that's why I am so adamant that go for the grassroots. You've got to help these grassroots candidates because they're legitimate. They
yeah,
believe in term limits. They believe in not going along to get along. They believe in let's take this thing back for the people, not for the party. Party candidates, I'm not interested in.
hmm,
And the Republican Party in Illinois is broken. And the only way to fix it is by putting in place grassroots candidates so we can start winning back the majority or we get out of the super minority party and at least get to the minority party. And then from there, we can hopefully draw a stalemate where we become even with them. So
yeah,
truly that there is some governance going on in our state rather than right now, it's layup after layup.
yeah.
That's all it
They
happens.
pass
Whatever they
whatever they
want, they
want.
get.
Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. You're listening to Conservative Cat and Dave Paul Blumenshine joining me in studio. One thing that I wanted to pick your brain on, DPB, was the losing, right? You've mentioned grassroots candidates. They are the ones that we need to throw our support behind. And one thing that I think I've been noticing is that grassroots candidates, they tend to lose. And the reason why is because they don't have the backing of the party,
Yeah.
and the money that comes with the party. Although the the party here in the state of Illinois is kind of bone dry when it
Well,
comes
they
to
don't have
money
any
because
money anyway.
there's
Yeah, that's right. There are a
the
few little bright spots. Darren LaHood at the federal level is sitting on, I'm guesstimating it. Last I had looked, it was close to $4 million. You got to realize there's only three Republican Congress people in the state of Illinois out of the 17 districts. So 14 Dems, 3 Republicans, Darren LaHood, Mary Miller, and Mike Bost, who Mike Bost is not going to maintain his seat because Darren Bailey's running against him. See, I just plugged my friend Darren Bailey, the grassroots candidate who every time he's run for office, whether it was state rep, state senate, or the governorship, he was opposed by the House Republicans, the Senate Republicans, and the GOP, the
yeah.
Illinois GOP.
Yeah, well, you're met with all kinds of resistance as a grassroots candidate. And when you're met with all kinds of resistance, it makes it that much harder to win.
Yes.
Which is my concern with Donald Trump right now, because he's met with all kinds of resistance, not just from Democrats, but also from Republicans. Look at Mike Pence. Look
Yeah.
at like
Chris
Chris
Christie. Let's
Christie.
which right now it's Pence and Christie and Asa Hutchinson, which I don't even know why that guy's in the what Ace somebody whatever's happening there. The guy from North Dakota, I don't know why he's in the race. The legitimate contenders are DeSantis, which is barely because his numbers are falling. Tim Scott, he had some money in his senatorial account. So from a federal election commission, he was able to maintain at least a decent run. And then finally Vivek, who has plenty of money.
Yeah. And
But it's never going to get over 20%. None of them are.
no,
Trump is the nominee because he appeals to the
correct.
Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, and even our friends on the libertarian side, because they're only going to get
God
5% anyway.
God bless him. God
bless
bless him. But you're right,
You
because
talk about a form of schizophrenia. It's like, what do you agree? What do you cheer for? You're against the Democrats and you're against the Republicans.
no, you stand for everything and stand for nothing all at the same time. You cannot get people to vote for a candidate who has no convictions.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, leaders have convictions.
yeah,
And if you don't have true convictions that you stand by, and if
yeah,
you're wishy washy on everything, you're never going to run a true leader.
yeah.
People will not vote for somebody who thinks that they can't lead,
You're
right?
you're you're going to get some hate mail from some of our libertarian friends.
Well,
Bring
and
it, bring
that's
it.
the
I
thing
love it.
is, you've got to be convicted.
Yeah,
Now, the people on the left have convictions, and those convictions are rooted in evil.
yeah,
And the people on the right have convictions, and those are rooted in good.
yeah.
So there is
What
right and
makes
wrong.
this country good? The Declaration of Independence,
Mhm.
the Constitution of the United States. We are the party of law and order. Now, I'm not saying everyone, believe me. We just went through the last 30 minutes of talking about the fact that the Republican Party is equally broken in Illinois.
Yeah.
We know who the Democrats are. They show themselves every day. I can go to JB Pritzker's social media page.
Yeah.
I can go to Occupy Democrats. I can see the socialism that these people are peddling.
But
Try
they
going,
have convictions.
but
That's what
they're convicted.
they're
They're
convicted.
driven. I mean, this
They're
one right here.
driven.
I'm 18 hours ago. JB Pritzker said, well, 18 hours ago. Well, this will be Saturday, but we're taking yet another powerful step towards ending gun violence, not illegal gun violence, just gun violence. Tell me all the legal gun violence that you're ending.
Yeah. The
By
police
holding gun
officer.
manufacturers accountable for the role they play in perpetrating this epidemic. No, I don't think the gun dealers are out there selling to the gangbangers in the inner city of Chicago.
No, they're not. And here's the thing, you go after gun dealers in the way that our federal government has gone after them, then you start to make enemies of the gun dealers. And the gun dealers are supposed to be our first line of defense
Yeah.
against gun crimes,
Yeah.
because they're supposed to report to the ATF, this
Yes.
agency that is completely broken.
Yeah.
And they're not doing that anymore, because the ATF, instead of going after the criminals, have decided to go after the dealers, the gun dealers, the law abiding gun dealers, for petty paperwork crimes. It's almost like, in the case of the indictment down in Fulton County, you're going after the people who rigged the election, the riggers, and you're not going after, or you're going after the people who tried to stop the rigged election from happening, instead of going after the actual riggers. That's how it goes down in Fulton County, Georgia. You are pro-criminal and anti-legal, a law-abiding citizen, bottom line. But yeah, sorry, libertarians. I'm so sorry to say this, but the facts are the facts. If you run a candidate with no convictions, people will not get behind that candidate, because in order for you to lead, you have to be a convicted person.
Yeah.
You have to stand for something. And libertarians stand for nothing, because they stand for everything all at the same time, which is hilarious to me. And
Hold on. Listen
like
to this.
basic math, I don't know, basic understanding of uh, government, philosophy, humanity. Come on.
Well, we're talking about the state fair and the Republican Day. Well, they also have a Democrat Day. Well, every day at the state fair is Democrat Day, because you go up and through any of the gates that come into the state fair. They're lined with posters or yard signs of JB and Juliana Stratton and Susan Mendoza and Bill Frederick and
tents.
Alex. Yeah, exactly. But JB said 4 days ago, it was great to be back at the state fair yesterday to celebrate Governor's Day. Because they have a whole Governor's Day. They only have Democrat Day, they have Governor's Day. But Illinois Democrats have fought tirelessly to make our state a bright light of freedom. Freedom. The JB's talking about freedom, Mr. Lockdown, Mr. Tyrannical ruler in the center of the nation. and our work is just getting started. So I'm flipping through the pictures. It doesn't look like there were that many people there at Governor Day for the picnic on the same picnic grounds we were on. They had the same stage, but they wanted to highlight JB and Juliana Stratton. But it looks like almost a Joe Biden event. So if they're so popular and he's this beacon of hope and this beacon of light to the Illinois economy and the Illinois way of life, then why aren't there more people there celebrating this?
Oh, no,
The
it's a
Republican
total
Day was
facade.
packed.
It was packed.
It was divided, and it wasn't nearly the crowd we had for the last 2 years when we had
Darren Bailey.
Darren Bailey, because it wasn't necessarily about Darren. Darren just was the figure, the person who represented fighting for the rights of the people of Illinois.
And I'm going to say this, and I'm stealing it from Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck has said that there is a God-sized hole in people's hearts. That really is. It's huge in people's hearts, and they're craving for something. And Darren Bailey had that following, not because he talked about and yee rah rah people's rights. Yes. So you hear JB saying that kind of same stuff, I'm for your freedom and blah, blah, blah. Right. It's not because of that. It's because he led by like he walked by faith.
Yeah.
that like, and he
continually talked about people getting involved at the grassroots level, precinct committee people, going on your school board, county board, pushing back, zero-based budget, meaning that we need to be accountable. He tackled all the issues of Illinois, the fact that we are over-regulating, the fact that we're shutting businesses down during a crisis that a COVID crisis that really didn't need to be shut down because not every other state. In fact, we were one of the last states to open up, to drop the shutdown, the lockdown, or whatever you want to call those executive orders that he was ruling over us with. And Darren was the voice of saying, no, this enough's enough. Mm-hmm. And we're not seeing that kind of leadership in the Republican Party. It's the continuation of people like Tony McCombie who are saying, well, if Trump gets elected, then we're going to lose 5 more House seats. And can we afford to lose more? Well, yes, we can afford to lose a lot more House seats. But Tony, compromising to the point that we have Dennis Tipsort co-sponsor with Chris Welch a bill that allows non-citizens the right to arrest citizens, we're going in the wrong way. We're going in the wrong direction, I should say.
Yeah. You're listening to Conservative Cat City's 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. With me in studio, you know him, you love him, David Paul Blumenshine, and you can find his YouTube channel at The DPB Show. Be sure to subscribe and find this video at YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. It's airing live right now on those social medias. The Conservative Cat Show is Saturdays from 5 to 7. David Paul came in studio and we were talking about grassroots candidates. And I've noticed that they just continue to lose grassroots candidates. And that's no, I'm not laughing. I'm not trying to be mean, but it is. They continue to lose, but they use that failure to pivot themselves into more races, more runs, and they don't
into radio up. Even yours truly, obviously a grassroots candidate. I ran, I find it fascinating because we talk about it does take money to win these elections, but what scares the establishment, I ran against Dan Brady both times in 2018 and 2020. He had well over about $250,000 in his war chest to campaign against me. I had my first run. I was able to pull together a few pennies. I got about $4,000. I bought some signs, not a lot of them. I didn't have the money. I couldn't do mailers. I could do some door knocking cards. So I had a door knock. My wife and I personally knocked on 4,500 doors, the two of us, just trying to let people know there was a different way we participate in praise. So I ended up with 25% of the vote, with $4,000 against a well-established career politician in Dan Brady. And mind you, that's not a slam. I mean, if you can get, if that's what you want to pursue in life and become a career politician, I call him one of the best retail politicians ever, because nobody does it better than Dan, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, there's an end to your career. Dan has been in public office now after this after he stepped away
Oh, he
from
would
the.
have kept going had you not run against him a second time and got more percentage of it.
Well, I ended up with $12,000 against a $250,000 in Dan's war chest, and he was being funded by the party, and I wasn't. I was the grassroots candidate, and with $12,000, thankfully, I had some larger donors this time around, people who wrote $1,000 check to the campaign. I was able to get 38% of the vote in 2020. 38% of the vote drops that advantage. Because once again, think about this. You don't need to get 100% of the vote to win. You just need to get 50% plus one vote. I was at 38.
That was close.
That's closing the gap down. Going into a third election, the maps got redrawn. Obviously, the Sweetheart District of the 88th District.
Well, but here's the thing, David. You managed to rock the boat enough to push Dan Brady, and I do believe this, out of that seat to cause some sort of redistricting to happen because they were afraid.
Well, redistricting is by law. They have to redistrict with the census.
But they could have kept that district the same.
Well, yeah, they could have. Yeah, they didn't have to. They didn't have to. Yeah, they can rewrite the maps, right? They're not under any obligation to change the districts. You're correct. And they have, and you would believe they would draw fair maps. There's nothing fair. They draw these new congressional districts and they're all over the state. You know, you can, in the 17th congressional district, you can start out here and go as far south as Hayworth and go all the way up to Winnebago County and Rockford. And it wraps around the western part of Illinois through Rock Island. I mean, they're totally gerrymandered. They're gerrymandered, even though the governor said that he would veto any map that wasn't a fair map. There's not fair maps in Illinois. But bottom line is, you're right. They redistricted, drew those maps. Dan Brady was part of that in the General Assembly. And they created a district that he could have sat in until the cows came home.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Republican district, the 88th. Dan Calkins ended up running for it. Dan Brady ended up running for Secretary of State. He then became the redheaded stepchild, as our friends Aldonzo and Dees like to refer to it, because even the leadership of the Republican Party threw away Dan Brady. After all of that time he committed and raised money for the party, they went with a guy named John Milhauser, who was part of the slate with Richard Irvin, which I find fascinating because all of the Richard Irvin people tend to be, they're establishment, especially those folks in Sangamon County. And there's even somebody in the Central States Committee is made up of a bunch of Richard Irvin backers. Well, all these Richard Irvin backers are suddenly a Mike Boss backer. And Mike Boss is being propped up by Kevin McCarthy, who still is very weak in a lot of manners. I'm not taking away the good things he's done, because he's done some good.
Yeah.
But he still isn't adamant and forceful enough. He should be speaking out. But he's backing Mike Boss.
There should have been emergency impeachment.
Without question. You know, these people are not willing to show the backbone that is needed. And Kevin McCarthy is endorsing Mike Boss, which should tell you everything you need to know. Anytime the establishment gets behind a candidate, it's because they want that candidate to remain in office so they can dictate how things run.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about you, the people, we the people. It's about the party.
Yeah. And, you know, you're peeling back this curtain of because we get to look inside the David Paul Blumenshine run. And, you know, it takes a few times for you to run and to really make a difference. Like, believe it or not,
Yes.
right? Losing that two times,
it
caused some waves. It caused some waves.
It caused a lot of waves. And then, you know, here I come out of a state rep run. And suddenly we realize we don't have enough people to run for city council in Normal.
Mm-hmm.
Stan is the lone wolf.
And you what?
Well,
I can't say that.
Yeah.
Well, you almost won.
I gave it a good run, but I had to come out of, because I was convicted about the January 6th thing with the presidential run of 2020 and President Trump here at the station. I came behind the mic for the reason to tell you, the listeners, that this state is corrupt. I know that all of you knew that, but to continue to not address the brokenness of this state is a crime. To continue as believers, faithful people, in supporting, letting my tax dollars fund abortion. I'm sorry. If you want abortion, pay for it yourself. But my taxpayer dollars as a Christian should not go to fund mobile abortion clinics, which now is being done through our gas tax dollars. They're being utilized for mobile abortion clinics. Enough is enough. We've got to stand up. This is why I
And
ran for office.
Republicans voted for that gas tax, the increase of those gas taxes. And where do you think those gas tax dollars are
let's
going?
just name them. Billy Brady voted for that
Mhm.
gas tax. Jason Barrickman, both of those gentlemen are no longer in the state Senate. Bill Brady, Tom Bennett voted for that gas tax increase. You know, these are the people that represent. This is what
18th largest, I think, is the 18th most in the state. Like, we have the largest gas tax.
Yeah,
So we're in the top percentile for the highest gas tax in the nation. It's probably way high above that now.
Well,
but
cumulative taxation, we lead the nation in taxation overall. You bundle all of the different taxes and fees together. Illinoisans are taxed to death. And that's why people leave. That's why we went from being the 5th largest state as based on population to the 6th largest. Pennsylvania went ahead of us. We still have one of the largest economies to scale, but it's very rare that companies continue to come here, even though JB will tell you that companies are coming here in droves, right? We're adding, but it doesn't show in the fact that we retire our unfunded liabilities at the state level when we have a crisis that's looming on the pension side of things, that it's not sustainable.
Yeah. And he's the biggest purveyor of saying that the U.S. Census data, right, that, it doesn't say that people are leaving the state of Illinois. And like we touched on earlier in the show, the voting rolls.
Yeah, the voter rolls.
The voter rolls.
Which once again, Kat, I was naive to all of this. I was like you when I looked into the future of Illinois. And I didn't know where I would go with it. I decided to run. But once again, putting myself out there, running through 2 state rep campaigns, I started to realize what you realize what the swamp is. You realize who the swamp creatures are. You start hearing conversations and putting yourself in positions where people start telling you things. This county board member from Grundy County, Chris, don't have his last name. I should look it up here because I gave him my email here at the station, and he's going to be reaching out to you, Kat. But Chris contacted me. Why did he reach out to me? Because somebody from LaHood's camp told him that he needed to talk to DPB. Why? Because my wife and I went to work. We were committed to representing the people of the 105th district at the time, the people of McLean County, the people of Illinois. And we became adamant about that. That grew into a much larger spectrum of wanting to represent the people, not only in all of Illinois, but throughout the nation.
Yep.
And that's why we got in touch with the Trump campaign, and we work on behalf of the Trump campaign and the Mary Miller campaign and the Mike or the
this
Darren Bailey campaign.
failing, but failing upwards is nothing new. And I've got to close the show out today, folks. But DPB, I want you to listen to this because it's been going on, and it's the land of Lincoln. And I'm going to get emotional just reading about this, because this is suffering a setback is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think that people are starting to have this conversation of, oh, well, oh, no, we continue to lose as grassroots candidates. We're never going to, beat Illinois. And I don't think that that's true. I think we're just starting to really take these setbacks and get these setbacks to fire us up, to launch us into something big. So Abraham Lincoln, you talked about this over the phone with me this week. Lost a job 1832, defeated for state legislature in 1832, failed in business in 1833, elected finally to the state legislature in 1834, had a nervous breakdown in 1836. His sweetheart died in 1835. It was defeated for Speaker of the House in Illinois in 1838. And then he was defeated for a nomination for Congress in 1843. finally he was elected to Congress. So you see what he's doing. He's failing upward.
Yes.
He was elected finally in 1846 to Congress. He lost a nomination in 1848, was rejected for land officer in 1849, defeated for U.S. Senate in 1854, defeated for a nomination for vice president in 1856, again defeated for U.S. Senate in 1858. Eventually, by 1860, he was elected president of the United States. So you see, Illinois, we are a people of Abraham Lincoln being one of
The land of Lincoln.
the oldest
Or under
testaments to
J.B.
this.
Prisker, land of make-believe.
We continue to fail upwards.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time for grassroots candidates to really to begin their victory. But
don't believe people when they tell you that, well, you've lost twice, therefore you're a 3-time loser if you lose a third time. No, if you lose 10 times, you still are continuing the process of moving forward.
Yep.
Keep going.
Darren
Call
Bailey
me.
lost for governor.
Yes.
He's launching himself into this congressional race against Mike Bost, taking
because
on the
he sees the need,
establishment
because Mike Bost has become part of the swamp.
Yep. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about, David Paul. So thank you so much joining me on Conservative Cat. We are going to have to take a break, folks. But David Paul Blumenshine, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kat. Don't forget, tune in tomorrow at the DPB show from 1 to 3 on Sunday.
1 to 3 on Sunday. You guys have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.